It was spring of 1971, and I was really tired of being cold up in northern Illinois. I hitchhiked down to a party in Champaign-Urbana, that's the center of Illinois, where some friends of mine were going to school. That night we got in the subject of, where this buddy of ours named Steve was, and somebody said, well, he's down in Key West. And I'm like, Key West, that's the end of Florida, isn't it? And they said, yeah. And I said, wow, that sounds good. And they said, you want to go? And they had a van, and those were crazy times, but we jumped in that van, and 36 hours later, we pulled into Key West, and a day or two after that, we ended up here at this beach called Higgs Beach. And this was the first welcoming place to Key West for us. I came back here in '72 for a little visit. The love of Key West got a little stronger, and then I came back here in 1973. And this time I brought a girl with me that I had met in northern Illinois that is now my wife and has been with me all through this journey, and her name is Janet. Here at Higgs, in those first weeks and months, we hung out here like people here. We swam, played frisbee, went over to this little joint over here, got a bite to eat. It was hamburgers and hot dogs, nothing more than that. Not even really the kind of Cuban fare that we came to know. But we began to feel a level of comfort with Key West, hanging out this idyllic place, going swimming and stuff. Life went on, got a job as a cook in a place called The Midget. Life went on, more jobs, more friends, more times in Key West. And then Janet and I got married, and not too long after that, Justin was born here in the hospital, Key West Hospital, and started life here, early life in Key West. I mean, what was that like for a little child at that point in time?
Well, it was pretty idyllic, really. It was quiet enough to where I could basically just kind of have my run of the island, just go out and, I would go downtown, where all the bars were and everything. And I mean,
you weren't going to the bars yet?
No, not quite. My buddy Derek, his family owned a shell shop down there on Green Street.
Is this not the same Derek that you went to his house for dinner one night?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was his grandmother's house. We went to his grandma's house. She was cooking dinner that night, and I was spending the night at his place. And I sat down at her kitchen table. I can still remember her kitchen to this day. And I sat down at her table, and she made, I believe she made arroz con pollo. And it was, I remember just
Justin, you didn't eat anything more than cereal, fruit at that point in time, and you sat down to arroz con pollo. Yeah. That's the power of Cuban food.
It's gateway. The arroz con pollo was like the gateway dish for me.
Well, let's go downtown and see what's going on down there, and maybe we could find something to eat too.
Sounds like fun.
So we're here at El Mocho, which is on Stock Island, very near the fishing boats that we're going to be going to shortly. This is the kind of place that fishermen have been coming to for 40 years. El Mocho is a straight-up Cuban restaurant. Classic kind of like a truck stop for fishermen, really. And like to come here and get café con leche and simple tostada later on today. Probably go to another Cuban place and get a Cuban mix, but this is a good way to start the day, like a lot of the neighbors here are doing. I'm here with our friends from Aquarium 5. Jerry and David have been fishing down here for 30 years.
Yep.
And I've been buying some fish from them for a real long time. And actually came down here a few years ago and we did a show with Emerald. And these two are the ones that supplied the fish for that show, and we took that fish up to New York City. What do you got today?
Well, we got a little mutton snapper here.
Beautiful.
Really good eating fish.
Yeah.
We got some nice yellowtail.
People have to understand that when the fish stays this straight, I mean, this is not frozen. This is how fresh this is.
Yeah, that comes from the brine. You use salt water and crushed ice. So it makes the water below freezing.
In here?
Yeah, in here.
What's the ratio? Just do it by handfuls?
Yeah, no, we do it by bucketfuls. I would say like maybe 10 buckets of ice and like maybe 2 buckets of salt water.
That is gorgeous.
Big amberjack.
What's your favorite way to eat this?
Smoked.
Yeah.
It's a really good smoke.
How much do you think this one weighs?
I don't know. What does it feel like?
20.
It feels like more than that to me. I don't know.
It is. I don't know.
It's either that or I'm getting weak. I can tell you that our best-selling dish of all time through all the years of cooking in South Florida is yellowtail. We do a pan-cooked fillet of Key West yellowtail with mashed potatoes, citrus butter, and I think we figured in a year alone we've served on average 10,000 orders.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is some of the best eating fish.
I learned how to cook this down here from a woman named Betty Howard, Bahamian descent woman that lived in Bahama Village. I worked with her at the Pier House in 1978 and 79, and it was just that simple method. She taught me how to do it, and people love it.
Yeah, you don't have to do a
You
lot
can
to it,
imagine
'cause
how
it's
many
so
ways
easy.
we know how to eat it, you know.
I am-
You got it broiled,
Yeah.
you got it fried, you put it on leave the skin on, put it on the barbecue.
On the half shell, sort of, where you're leaving the skin on and
Yeah.
protect
Skin
it.
on,
I
you scale it.
scale it,
You
Yeah.
scale it with a hose.
and you just hold it like this, and
Uh-huh.
the scales come right off.
Fantastic.
You don't even need a knife.
Yeah.
And then you fillet it off, and you take the bone, the bone out, and you make little X's. Otherwise, on the barbecue, it curls up.
Right.
And it's amazing. And just season both sides, and a few minutes on each side.
minutes
and
on
you
each
have
side.
Amazing dinner.
Can't beat it.
Well, I am gonna come back here again soon because I've just bought a new smoker, and I'm gonna get one of these babies right here. It's Jack from you.
Oh, okay, no problem.
And my son and I are going to get some smoked fish going for the new school up in Miami, the Miami Dade Culinary Institute, Miami Culinary Institute. You haven't seen it yet because it's brand new.
Yeah.
But we'd love to have you up there, and maybe you could give a lesson to the students.
Okay.
Would you like to do that?
I would like to
She's
take
the
your
cook.
class. That sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Norma.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you again.
Always a
Good to see
pleasure.
you.
Well, where I'm standing right now is called the Red Doors. It has a long history, goes back into the 1800s, 1868. This is right across the street from where the fish boats came in, the shrimp boats came in, and it became a drinking establishment for many, many years, apocryphally named the Bucket of Blood because there were a lot of bad fights and things like that. Ultimately became gentrified like a lot of Key West. We actually lived upstairs, my wife and I lived upstairs in the period of the 1980s, renting an apartment up there and just being able to meander off to the waterfront here. My wife worked across the street at a bar called the Half Shell Raw Bar, and I worked in a number of different places on Duval Street, just sort of absorbing the times of Key West as they were then. And it was just a natural flow of things to be here at the Red Doors and going to work. So do you know why these things are called grouper nuts?
I'm guessing maybe it's where they find the meat on the fish.
I didn't go to that part of the cooking class, but actually I do know the backstory because a nice young lady back here named Allie told me, which is that the owner, Buddy Owens, who created this this food truck that has grown large here, is a very interesting individual, very idiosyncratic kind of individual that is typical of the Key West spirit. And Buddy basically said that nuggets, like in McNuggets, were boring and so far from his thinking that he wanted to create something that people would remember. So he calls them grouper nuts. I think he's accomplished the mission by calling them grouper nuts. But essentially what they are is fresh Key West grouper, lightly breaded, fried, served with some wedges of lime. And interestingly enough, we saw them make homemade French fries. They call them hand pulled.
Hand pulled.
Why?
Because they're blown by hand.
One of those
Naturally.
machines?
Yeah, I think they're doing them to order too.
I think that some of these things should never be modernized. So this is an old school place on a corner of the street in America that's right across the street from where we once lived before you were born. And they're still doing it old school ways here. And then you got to show the students about how to keep it real and keep it kind of rustic and regional with B.O.'s Fish Wagon, which stands for Buddy Owens.
I like it.
Well, dig in. Fortunately for me, I've always been a reader, and books were a big part of my education. Reading, writing, cooking, tasting, these are the things that I think have helped me become someone who's been known for a certain kind of cuisine. It began with dream sheets, where I began to read a magazine, a book, or go to a store or something, and then just jot down the things that I was thinking about. The dream sheet started on pieces of paper, moved over to bigger pieces of paper. Eventually they moved into a notebook, and then eventually they moved over into the computer. a series of computers that Justin actually taught me to use. The dream sheets were something that I started doing in the early or mid 1980s, and coupled with that, there were a few books that were the keys to my understanding of food. Around 1988, I came across this book called Culture and Cuisine, A Journey Through the History of Food by Jean-Francois Revel, a Frenchman. My French isn't so good, but luckily he wrote it in English, or it was translated into English. And in this book, Revel talks about gastronomy, the history of gastronomy going through about a 500-year period. And it was in reading this book that I was inspired to write the piece that became known as Fusion. And fusion cuisine has come now to be part of the vernacular, not only in cooking, but in our entire fabric of social dialogues. Sometimes it's misunderstood, at least in the way that I originally thought of it. But in reading Revel, he talked about sort of this dialogue or this argument that went back and forth between a complex sort of gastronomy and then a more what I call mama gastronomy, and that was the more simple, humble, nourishing kind of gastronomy. And he wrote, "The gastronomical serial written by the centuries has as its plot the constant battle between the good amateur cook and the thinking chef. A lover's quarrel that, as in all good adventure novels, ends after many a stormy scene, with a marriage." And here in the book I wrote the words, "a fusion." I began to think, why am I cooking dishes that were New York dishes, French dishes, Chinese dishes, dishes from other parts of the world? And I began to think about, I need to figure out where I'm going with cuisine. And in reading this book, I came up with this idea called fusion. Later that fall, I was asked to become part of a group of chefs and writers and winemakers in Santa Fe. And I sat on a panel with Charlie Trotter and Emeril Lagasse and two others from other parts of the United States, and I delivered this piece called Fusion. And from that time, the word fusion went into the dialogue of gastronomy, not only in America, but throughout the world. The next book that I came across was called Why We Eat What We Eat by a gentleman named Raymond Sokoloff. It was in this book that he gave me a much more clear idea on how South Florida, the Caribbean, the changes that occurred after Columbus went from the Old World to the New World, and then the dialogue that went back and forth between the Old World and the New World, starting right away, and how extremely exciting and creative that was. In his words, he wrote, "What is truly surprising about the transoceanic interchange of food and ideas after the 1492 visit of Columbus is how fast it happened. Within 50 years, the Spanish had established full-scale European agriculture in the West Indies, Mexico, Peru, and the Caribbean coast of South America. The Spanish had also opened up a regular trade with China from their base in the Philippines." We're talking now about all around the globe what was going on between this dialogue between Europe and the New World, and then further. Food and ideas flowed freely between Seville and Asia on the same ships that carried goods from China and the Americas to Europe, and on the return trip brought European necessities for the colonists. This book is just filled with all kinds of great information on how chilies, chocolate, tomatoes, strawberries, all of these things were not even known to Europe until that exchange with the Americas, Columbus, and then the traders and the discoverers and the history makers that came on after that. I began to realize that where I was living in Key West and then up in Miami and Miami Beach, I had the same chance to be an explorer and a creator. And that has been the story of my life as a chef. And I thank these two gentlemen for writing these books, and I thank Key West for giving me the liftoff, and I thank South Florida for continuing to provide me with the inspiration that makes me jump out of bed and be glad that I can cook for a living. Something that you grew up with, conch fritters and bollos.
Nice.
So I'm basically thinking, why don't we incorporate some of this stuff into our cooking class, show them a taste of Key West, you know, real rustic neighborhood food.
Yeah.
Of course, we'll have to dress it up a little bit, you know.
No, it looks good. I love it. I mean, what says more about you know, the real rustic, kind of honest street foods of Key West than these kinds of things, you know?
Well, and I think, well, the conch fritters, I think most people are going to be aware of what those guys are. But the thing that I think is really unique are these guys, the bollitos.
Yeah.
And I never heard of these until we came to Five Brothers. And I didn't know what they even were. I don't think I even had them probably for a number of years until we one day just decided to give them a try. But now that I've come to know more about them, these are related to the Brazilian fritters called acarajé.
Wow.
But I think what's key here is to show people that how their grandmother's food, you know, their grandfather's food, their neighborhood food, street food can make it into, you know, what might be called fine dining, white tablecloth dining, because whether this is a hush puppy,
Yeah.
or a bollo, or a bollito, or acarajé,
Or tater tots. I mean,
or tater tots, that, and we've seen how bar foods become elevated, and you know, there are nice renditions of things like sliders, and pork bellies become all the rage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think by taking this humble little sack of portable food and integrating it into something, maybe even something as refined as a dish with sweetbreads or scallops or something like that, would show that fusion that I fell in love with, as far as taking what we consider rustic food and marrying it or fusing it with the high-end food. We could fold something into these guys too.
Mm-hmm.
We could like think what's in season, you know, what's going on right now, that we might want to say, well, there's Florida sweet corn going on right now.
Yeah.
So let's look to see what we'll find maybe at Gabrielle's place or something like that,
Yeah.
and see if there's some way of maybe welding those two ideas together, the bollitos and something from her beautiful garden.
Could be really something delicious. I mean, they can carry a nice piece of fish.
Right,
It could incorporate some seasonal vegetables, like you said.
right. And then we'll figure out sauces and stuff like that. But I think that, you know, as we're sketching and thinking about the pop-up or the classes, I think elements like this Key West street food is kind of shows, you know, where we come from and what we love about cuisine. Well, you've probably guessed this already, but I'm staying at the southernmost point. The next islands out are Cuba. Right now, standing at this corner of Key West, I am closer to Cuba than I am to Miami by a long shot. It's 90 miles to Cuba, 160 miles to Miami, and I guess that helps us see right away why the Cuban influence is so strong in Key West, historically, culinarily, culturally. Our folk art, our writers, all kinds of people have influenced Key West with the flavors and the beauty of Cuba. So just imagine yourself on a boat crossing this water right here. 3 hours you could be having dinner in Cuba. Maybe I'll join you there. That'd be fun. We'll take a class there. That would be fantastic. So Kenny, how long has this been going on out here on Whitehead Street?
On Whitehead Street. Well, let's see. Okay, we moved over here in 1973, so I guess it's been going on here since 1973.
So you were this big? No, you weren't even born yet.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm 55.
So,
I was in
you're
high
kidding me?
school. Yeah, I was getting out of high school then.
We're almost the same age.
Okay.
So how long you been doing the cooking here?
Let me see. I would say I've been doing it for about 10 years now.
And before that was your father-in-law?
Yeah, Hugh Robertson.
Yeah.
He's been doing it before that. The Elks has been, it's an Elks function. It goes to a good cause, so it's for our charitable functions that we do.
Well, I moved to Key West in '71, really started living here in '73, but I've been seeing you guys do this Saturdays mostly over the years.
Every Saturday.
Every Saturday.
Famous Saturday barbecue.
So a lot of people will be watching this and will want to learn about barbecue from you. So show us your ribs and show us, you know, what your methodology here is.
Only charcoals, okay? Wood charcoals, mixture of charcoal, different whatever.
No gas flame. It's all
No gas, no flame ever. So there should be no flame, just smoking, slowly smoking. Okay? Yeah.
How long will these be smoking?
till they're done.
That's a good answer.
Till they're done. You can't
say
predict that.
Not by like 2 beers or 3 beers.
I don't drink when I'm cooking.
Well,
maybe 3 of her beers.
What are her beers?
By the time she has 3 beers.
Oh, I see. So she's your timer.
Yeah. She comes and helps me on Saturday. She's what they call daughter of the Elks. So this is, if you notice, if you see the signs from here, one says Coral City Elks Temple 400, and then the other one says Coral City Elks Lodge number 610. So
got it.
It's a dual organization. We have a male hierarchy and a female hierarchy, and they all come together under one umbrella.
They're called children.
Well, they call the females daughters, and the guys are brothers.
I see.
Okay.
And that still
I
goes.
am the exalted rular.
Whew.
Okay.
Do I bend down on one knee?
The title sounds great, but it means president in other words.
Do you have a card that says exalted ruler?
No, but I can get me one.
Give me one of those. Okay.
I gotta get me one of those.
Is it too early to get some ribs?
No, it is not. We have some right here. Ready? We have ribs, sausage. Okay. Over here we have chicken.
You know, I know there's got a lot of chickens in Key West, but I've never seen chickens with wings that big.
Well, this is turkey.
I know.
This is turkey. This is chicken. That's ready to come over there.
Those chickens been working out.
We keep it on indirect heat.
Yeah. Is there a mojo or a marinade or anything on these things?
Actually,
just spice rub?
The only place in Key West that does not use mojo.
So what the color is?
Mojo.
What's the color from? Just cooking?
Yeah, this is from the slow cooking.
Yeah.
Okay, right. They said the mojo burns. And that's the reason. And I found that out. We were doing it with my father-in-law years ago. That the mojo burned on the outside.
Right.
So we don't marinate them with.
We don't mess with mojo
at all. Just the secret seasonings that have been passed down to me. That is the secret. You always heard that the Elks and the Masons are a secret society. Well, our secret is the seasoning and the sauce.
The exalted seasonings.
Well, you know, it's great to be out here in the street, smelling the food cooking, and this is makes the neighbors crazy. I'm sure it makes them hungry.
They know it's Saturday.
They know it's Saturday?
Every Saturday. When they smell the grills fire up, and they say that day is Saturday.
So let's get around here and get some ribs. Well, the place behind me is called the Green Parrot Bar. It's the oldest bar in Key West. It was here when we first got to town, and I had a conversation with a young lady in that bar one afternoon, and I was torn with the decision on whether to stay in Key West and take this job I was being offered, or return to Illinois and go back to the place where I was born, but the very cold, harsh winters of Illinois. And I think somewhere around the second hour of being in this place, I decided that Key West was going to be my new home. And so we lived just about a block and a half behind the Green Parrot Bar, and I worked in another place just a block behind that at the corner of 700 Duval Street. And that was 1977, and the flavors of Key West started to get into my head. And the flavors of the Green Parrot kind of made me relax on certain afternoons in those years as well. Key West has always been a haven for writers. Unlike Ernest Hemingway's fabulous home over on Whitehead Street, Tennessee Williams' home is the home behind me. Tennessee Williams lived, wrote, walked these streets, swam at Higgs Beach, and I was fortunate enough to cook for him at the Pier House in 1978 and 79 when he came there to that amazing property that was owned by David Wachowski at that time. I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to be a chef my whole life, and right around that period of 80, 81, I was vacillating between being in theater and being a chef. I liked writing, and I liked being in a town that was so filled with writers. A stage production of A Streetcar Named Desire was announced would be taking place in Key West at the Red Barn Theater, and I tried out for the play, and I got a small role. And it was an exciting thing to do and be involved with these actors that were much better than me, and to be bringing Tennessee Williams' words to life. Well, as it turned out, right before the production went into the public side, Tennessee Williams came to our dress rehearsal. And he was very kind and generous, and he made nice comments to us all, especially to the lead actors. And at the end of our short run, it wasn't a long run, not that we ran out, but it was purposely short. Tennessee Williams asked us to come to this home. He had a party for us. But he had forgotten that the party was going to take place the day that it was, and so when we got here, there were no party favors, just some warm gin. And but being in Tennessee Williams' house was kind of intoxicating in and of itself. But we had the party. Mr. Williams was very kind. Somewhere toward the end of it, I'll just never forget, I was talking to Janet, and Tennessee Williams came up and he planted a kiss on my cheek right here, and we walked out into the night, I think a lot more drunk off that kiss than the gin. I'll never forget it. This is 2011. In 1986, I sat at this very table. And on this table, I had cookbooks from my own collection, which was pretty small at that time, but I still had probably 8 to 10 cookbooks here. And it was a cool morning that day, and I was writing the specials for that night by going through the books. I had pencils and notes and a cup of coffee, and there was French books, Italian books, books on Middle Eastern cooking. I turned around and looked at the horizon, and I saw this boat going across the water toward the horizon, maybe to Cuba or someplace. And it really struck me. I thought, well, what am I doing studying this work from all over the place when I don't even know my hometown, a town that I've come to call my own? I began to think about the people on that boat and where they were going and what they would eat. And it really became apparent to me that what I needed to do was to stop cooking from all over the world and find out what was going on in my particular place in Florida. For me, Key West, Florida. So I closed up the books and basically went back to the blank slate again for the first time in a number of years, and began to go to the little cafes and joints around Key West. And I'd look up their blackboard menus, and I'd see things mostly written in Spanish. And I'd try to get people to translate a little bit for me, because I didn't know that much about Spanish yet. And they did. They were happy to do that. So I asked the people who were sitting next to me, what is this dish? What is this dish? And slowly began to craft together something I came to call New World Cuisine. And this was the place it started. Gabriella, it's a pleasure to be here at your beautiful farms, Paradise Farms. It is a Paradise Farms, and we want to share with the students and the people who come from the enthusiast classes and things like that. We want to share with them South Florida's bounty, and you have been doing things with South Florida for many years here, down in this area of the world. Describe for the people who are watching us today where we are and what you do, basically.
Well, we're in South Florida, South Dade County. It's an area called the Redlands. And this is an agricultural area, and I've been farming here for 10 years now. And I started with an abandoned avocado grove and turned it into a property where over the course of a year we sell over 100 different things. We specialize in microgreens, edible flowers, baby greens, and now we're getting into mushrooms and dehydrated flowers. And we're really excited to work with the college and putting in the garden at the college, the culinary garden, and then inviting the students down here for classes, and just to kind of give everybody a nice idea of what tropical South Florida is all about, because as you know, it's certainly a very rich environment with lots of different tropical fruits and things.
I've been cooking down here since 1972, starting in Key West. But what I'm seeing now, finally, through efforts of like yours and some of the other farmers in the area, are the what are we calling it? The Seed to School?
Seed to School.
Seed to School. And with the school being here, we have an amazing partnership between the farmers and the school and the students and the interested folks who live in Miami-Dade to come take classes and enhance their own lives in some ways by utilizing things that have been here many, many years, but through an educational process they're going to enrich themselves. And I know that you've got things like Monstera deliciosa, which grows in the wild here, but a lot of people don't know what that is. But you have mangoes and you have mamey,
jackfruit,
jackfruit, I've always said it's a great place to be a cook, and I mean cook because that's the active part of what we do. But now the restaurant community is really getting involved and supporting organic and supporting sustainable much more than before. And some people remain a little bit skeptical, a little bit dubious. But how do you answer those people who are saying this is still yet to be something that's involving everyday people?
Well, I think how we bridge that gap is by encouraging people to grow their own food. And if we could get, you know, a garden in every home, and then people realize when they think organic is expensive, but when you grow your own, it's really a lot less expensive. It's like the cheapest way you could eat and the healthiest way you could eat. So I think by talking to people about growing their own food, and it's doable, like we're doing with the culinary garden, I think then people realize, oh, this is extremely nourishing, extremely satisfying on a lot of levels.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, as a farmer who's making their living, supplying people, you're still encouraging people to do it themselves, DIY.
Yeah.
And we as chefs are also saying to people, cook at home too. Even though we want you to come to our restaurants, we want you to cook at home. And so what we'll do is we will have these classes that will empower people to cook at home using the vegetables that they might grow themselves or get from you, or the herbs or the fruits, but learning techniques or enhancing the techniques that we can teach them through the school.
And I think that's why the program has the perfect name, The Enthusiasts. And I think people who may be growing their own food, cooking their own food, they're coming to us for inspiration. So we always have a role in that.
Well, this is an inspiring place to begin. So let's go back and find out what you've got growing.
All right, let's go.
All right. Gabrielle, these things will grow like an insane amount in a single night or something, right? Inches?
Yeah.
I've read about these things growing like a foot in a night. And are these more ornamental for this piece of property then?
Well, no, this is the bamboo guy. He needed a place to have, he has a small yard. This is his stock. So if he needs to get more bamboo, he kind of spreads out his bamboo at different properties. So I didn't have to buy it from him. He gave it to me to plant here, and I needed a hedge.
Because good bamboo makes good neighbors?
A great neighbor. Yeah. Because what happens, it keeps the weeds down pretty much. But then, you know, at night you get to hear the clanging, the sound of the bamboo.
Yeah, like a drum?
Yeah.
Percussion?
Nice and windy.
You might like to hear my bamboo. I said, all right, Sally, all right. To harvest enough to put into a menu would be something else, and plus it turns like an apple turns. It turns very rapidly.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make an anglaise or something with it, but it kind of obscures the fruit when you do something that manipulative.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just like to enjoy it almost like Justin said, where you wait till those platelets fall off, they turn the right color, and then just gently scrape them into a little bowl and eat them as is, or some yogurt, something like that.
Yeah, very simple.
Yeah. Like the sugar apple, I just think, you don't want to obscure it too much.
Yeah, I agree.
But there are plenty of things around here that we'd like to have in our menu.
Should we look at the sapodilla?
Let's do that, yeah. This is the sapodilla now, and its milk is just pouring right out of it because you just pulled it from its
Drip out. But when this is ripe, it's probably going to take a good week now. The taste is like cinnamon sugar, and sweet and cinnamon. So
when he was growing up, we had a tree in our yard in North Miami, and fortunately, one of his friends' mother was Cuban, and she said, "You've got to make a batido with that." And of course, we were like, "All right, what's a batido?" So. For a lot of people who will come to our class or to dinner, we may be making some batidos, which is it's a word for a milkshake made with fruit. And what we'll do, well, Justin, why don't you explain?
We can wait till it ripens and then harvest the fruit, and we can blend it up. Definitely with some some milk, maybe a little ice cream, touch sugar if it needs it, but it shouldn't. I think when it says that fruit and the heft it looks like it has, I think it's going to ripen nicely.
So what people want to make sure is almost everybody knows to look for the softness of an avocado. Basically, that's what's going to happen. The skin is going to get a little bit kind of wrinkly, not raisin wrinkly, but a little wrinkly, and that means that the fruit has changed from starch to sugar. And And to really have this fruit before it's reached full ripeness, as we know, is to like have an avocado when it's not ripe. You would just say, well, you should have waited a little bit longer because Mother Nature wasn't ready yet. But you could tell from the weight of this guy that it's going to be a beautiful specimen.
You know, kind of what I think I might like to try with this is making either like a granizado or even like a chewy candy.
Yeah.
Kind of reminiscent of the root beer barrels. Remember those things?
What if we did a?
Linger on the taste of the fruit itself and just make it more about the pure taste of the fruit.
Why don't we do various expressions of the fruit in a few different manifestations, and that way the guests can go, this is a candy, this is a granizado, this is a fruit leather, this is a batido.
Sure.
Because
series.
The many different ways you can prepare the fruit.
Yeah. Variations on a thing.
I think the Rolling Stones might have handled this fruit when they got their sticky fingers.
Yeah. Yeah. This milk is.
All right, what's next? I'm excited. As we know, this is can be the world's largest tree fruit. How long has this been growing here, Gabrielle?
Everything is a little bit off cycle this season because of the cold weather last year. And so I think this probably set back in February.
And how much more ripening on the vine would you like it to have?
These have a ways to go. I give this another month at least. And I think it's going to get bigger and it's going to fill out more. And then when we walk by, we're going to smell it actually.
And have you talked to people about the best way they've enjoyed the fruit in cooking or raw or?
Raw.
Mostly raw.
Cut it open, wear plastic gloves because it's going to stick to your
sticky
fingers.
Stuff, right. And some people call it juicy fruit.
Yeah.
Fruit.
Yeah.
Which you can even, sitting here, you're smelling this kind of little unctuous sweetness to it. And these little creatures that are flying around my face are going.
We're on that fruit next.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other thing is that when these, you just eat the seed pod, the meat around the seed pod, but there's another variety of jackfruit called the crunchy lemon jackfruit, and you can actually eat the entire inside of it. It's all edible. But on this, probably I think you get 50% of it ends up being edible.
It's hard to imagine a fruit this big, but this is even an adolescent compared to some.
Yeah. We've had them up to 50 pounds. That's the biggest we've had. I know the biggest recorded is 100 pounds, but our biggest has been 50. And then the seeds, you can put the seeds in the oven
and roast them like chestnuts, like, yeah.
You've done that?
Yeah. I'm a curious kind of a person.
You've probably done something the unedible part too to make it edible.
They're beautifully ornamental too. I mean, we could put them in your kitchen and people will go, what is that?
Yeah.
Gabriella, it's a pleasure to be here at your beautiful farms, Paradise Farms. Thank you. Justin, I've had such a good time sharing Key West with you and then with the folks that are coming to our classes. I hope they've gotten a sense of the taste that made us fall in love with this place. You know, it's hard to put this to an end because it's something that I love to do with you.
Yeah.
To show people Key West and show them, you know, what made us fall in love with it, and then you fall in love with it all over again because now you're back here too.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've always loved showing people around my hometown. I've loved showing people around Miami too, as that's also been kind of my other hometown. It's just always it's always great to share a love of a place, and I think you and I both definitely share a great love of this place, you know, the South Florida in general. And it's been great to show people sort of the farmlands that some are hardly aware of that exist down in the Redlands, and then show them how some of our locals here are farming the sea around us.
We definitely have the best of both worlds by being able to go back and forth between Key West and Miami. And now that I'm teaching more with you and getting around and showing the love of South Florida, we're going to be going more to the farms, more to the farmers markets. We're going to see how things are grown, share our love with fishermen like we do out here, growers like we do in the Redlands and up in Miami, and actually in urban Miami with the things that are going on there as well.
Sure.
And as these classes we're going to be doing, it just means that the MCI, the school, is going to offer all of South Florida a magnificent haven, and you and I have got some fun things to do together toward sharing that love.
Rocket.